Welcome to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, my name's John, and in honor of the feast day of St. Christopher, we're going to be going over this book here, Reprobus, The Origin of the Christ Bearer. In particular, we're going to be going over a couple different things. The first thing is going to be the build plus the aesthetic. How is this graphic novel constructed? Is it sturdy? Is it not sturdy? Does it feel good in your hands? Do the pages turn well? What is the binding like? Those are some of the questions we're going to answer. The second thing is, how is the content quality? So this graphic novel in particular has a poem associated with it. Instead of descriptions, we're gonna go over the poem and the prose and how nice does it sound. Then we're gonna go over an example excerpt. I'm gonna go to a couple of the different pages, read the excerpt, go through the image to give an example of what is inside this graphic novel. And then finally, I'm going to give a review on this graphic novel myself. And I'm gonna try and be as impartial as I can be. Obviously, because I created this, I can't be fully impartial, but I'm gonna try my best to treat this like someone else completely different did a graphic novel on my confirmation saint and approach it how I would approach any other one.
All right, so here again, we have Reprobus, The Origin of the Christ Bearer. And so like I mentioned, the first thing we're gonna go over is the build quality plus the aesthetic. Now, in particular in the aesthetic, we have the title, Reprobus in large letters, and then we have the origin of the Christ bearers in the same font with white lettering right below. And then we have two pictures here. We have St. Christopher depicted with a halo in the front and in the back, and the halo in particular is gold. And we have Reprobus here on the left. Now, if you're not familiar with the tale of Reprobus or the tradition of Reprobus, Reprobus is supposed to be a giant with a dog head from the land of Canaan. And throughout his travels, he is looking to serve the strongest master. And he goes and he serves a king that has a large kingdom. He goes to serve eventually, I won't give everything away, but he'll serve other characters in this novel. And then towards the end, he serves a boy who he carries across a river, and this boy turns out to be the child Christ. And then after Reprobus takes the child Christ across the river, he then transforms into St. Christopher, the Christ bearer, and goes and evangelizes and preaches. And so that's kind of the symbolism between these two characters here, if you were not familiar. We can see that there's a slight almost halo in the back, and I did this intentionally. Obviously, I didn't want it to have gold because Reprobus isn't supposed to be, a saint. It's supposed to be, a giant from the land of Canaan that loves violence and war. But this is supposed to symbolize some kind of there's still a spark there. There's still something we can work with. And I think that's true of all people, right? There's something we can work with, something that God can make good of, right? Another thing about this book in particular, and if you look at the back, you'll notice a little disclaimer here. All the prose is original by the author. However, the illustrations were created using Midjourney AI. And so as a result of using Midjourney AI for some of the descriptions, you have some things that, are just kind of thrown in there, to the discretion of the AI, let's say. And one of these things is this pike or the staff here. St. Christopher didn't have a pike or staff or anything of that sort. He had a staff, but not a pike, and so, it's hard to kind of regulate these things. I don't think it's a huge deal, me in particular, but that's obviously something to note. Now, the overall color scheme in particular, it's kind of this like gray green, kind of military green-ish hue, which I really, really liked. I liked a lot. And I like particularly that contrast with the black on the back. You flip it over, you have some things particular. You have Reprobus, and then you have a short description of the book itself. You see a little bit about the author, me in particular, and then you have the ISBN here. But back to the black, I really like the black with this, let's say, green, military green contrast. Now the build has a couple things to note. The first thing is some of these pictures were meant to lay flat because the main part of the image is in the middle. And you see in particular, there's two panels that make up one large panel. Now, most comic books, as you'll know, when they lay flat, they lay completely flat. So if there is a picture that spans two panels, you'll be able to see it a lot more clearly. Because of Amazon's publishing binding, that was not an option. And so you have a little bit of an issue here, trying to get it to lay flat, but not wanting to mess up the binding too much. And so that's a little bit of a ding, because some of the pictures, you really do want them to lay completely flat, but it's just not an option. Like for instance, if we go here, you really want this to lay flat, because this is the whole focal point of this entire image. And you can't quite do it. I mean, you can do it if you really crank on it, but then you start to see that white appearing. Now you're starting to get into the binding, which that is what you do not want. Overall, there's this glossy sheen to all of the pictures themselves. They feel really nice. They feel really, really good. And they have this sheen and pop to them. So all the images have this deep, deep hue to them, this deep black that really emphasizes a lot of the different characters, or the different traits of the different characters. And so that's a plus. The cover has this sheen as well, and it really makes the letters pop, the images pop, and it really makes this look good on like a coffee table. Because if it's on a coffee table, this is what I was anticipating. Someone just pick it up and start going through. It really makes you want to reach out and grab it and thumb through the pages in particular. Now, the next thing I want to go over is the content quality. So there are two main aspects to this graphic novel in particular. The first thing being the images. Now, the images are only meant to serve to give life to the prose. I pictured it to be almost like a poem prayer, where you're reading the poem, you're stopping on each page, you're reflecting on what you read, and the images are just supposed to help you reflect. It's not supposed to be a graphic novel in the traditional sense, and it's certainly not supposed to be a novel. And so if we open up the pages, we go to the first page, we see a couple things. We see this prose that's outlined in this white text box, and this is going to be on all of the pages in particular. You're going to see the text here, and instead of having speech bubbles, when someone does speak, we're going to have quotes. So here, at the sound of the devil, I saw you tremble in fear. Let's see if we can get this to, yeah. At the sound of the devil, I saw you tremble in fear. Who is the devil? Tell me at once. Don't be so cavalier. So we don't have speech bubbles, but we have quotes to outline when someone is speaking. And it's supposed to be pretty clear who is speaking. But if we focus on the pictures here, most of them, I tried very hard to have them accurately depict what is being foretold or what the prose is outlining. So for instance, Reprobus was a giant with a dog head and claws. He thought because he was so strong that he had no flaws. He fought with a sword and defeated his foes. The account of his battles could fill 100 tomes. Now, I feel like this, and again, I'm not particularly impartial, but I feel like this image kind of encapsulates this description in general. A war, a battle, he's giving a battle cry out. He's fighting a whole bunch of people, and he's unscathed, he's victorious, and he's prideful, and he's ravenous. So I think that was a pretty good job. But the highlight, what I would say is the highlight of this graphic novel is the poem. Now, the poem was where this whole work actually started. So the first part was actually embodying the tradition of Reprobus, and then slowly finding the pieces of that story and codifying it in some kind of prose, and some kind of sing-songy kind of rhyming prose. You can think of Dr. Seuss. You can think of J.R.R. Tolkien, some of the limericks in, I don't know if they're called limericks or just poems or just songs, in Lord of the Rings. And it helps you kind of, one, it makes it enjoyable to read, but two, it helps you remember the different parts of the story. So here, the next page. He sought honor and glory and riches and splendor. To find this, he went to serve the strongest king so that he was remembered. And so in particular, again, I'm starting to ramble a little bit, but the poem, which is outlined here, the entire poem, is where, in my opinion, the best part of this work is. It's where the most of this is. If it was just this poem, I would have been happy, because it's supposed to just allow you to reflect on the story and try and parse out truths that are being communicated through you through the text. And so I think that's one of the strong suits, or is a strong suit, of this graphic novel. Another note on content quality. So you can see that there's this black border around here. Now this black border was for a couple different reasons, but the main reason being there was not an aspect ratio that was 16:9, at least for Amazon. And so I had to make it work by adding some black space so that the image itself could still be centered and not have distorted proportions. I think as a note for these black borders, I think it's okay, but it's a little dull. I mean, it's just black. It's just a bunch of ink that likely increased the printing price, or the price of each actual unit, because this is a lot of ink and this is expensive paper. So I think in the future, having this actually the same aspect ratio as the actual printing the book itself would be nice, because it probably will lower costs because you don't have a bunch of this black ink. Or if you have to do a border, try and do some kind of design, maybe a design of like a lace or flowers or stars or something around the borders that gives life to it a little more, that just makes it jump off the page. And then one more thing, for the most part, the images are very good. But as you can see in this one here, some images have a lot of black, a lot of dark space. And it emphasizes what needs to be emphasized well, but again, sometimes it just seems a little too dark and dreary. Another example of this is going to be right here, where yes, I think it sets the mood well, right? But I think that it's just too dark. It's just too dark. It just doesn't have a lot going on. I wanted it to be simple, but it does not need to be this dreary, in my opinion. And the next iteration of, I do have another novel in the works. I will have some different backgrounds and try and play with the color schemes a little more. Now 3, since we're on the same subject and we're going through this next part, which is the example excerpt, I read the first 2 pages, so I thought I'd continue with the first part of the graphic novel. One day he found a king, the strongest king in the land, so Reprobus served him and found glory so grand. One day they were dining and Reprobus saw, the king was afraid when he heard the devil's name, Reprobus was in awe. At the sound of the devil I saw you tremble in fear. Who is the devil? Tell me at once, don't be so cavalier. I will not tell you, no, I surely will not. For if I do, you will leave me and become his commandant. And so that's just a short excerpt of how it's supposed to be, what you can expect in this work. It's not a lot of text, it's a short poem, and there are these large descriptions that I really wanted the reader to just dive in. To just imagine you're sitting next to Reprobus or across from the king, or you are Reprobus, and reflect on what he's saying and kind of what his motives are and his intent, and maybe what he's going to do next.
Now there you have it. There is my review of Reprobus, The Origin of the Christ Bearer, authored by yours truly. I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. Again, I'm not unbiased. If you get it yourself and you have different opinions, or you have other comments and concerns, please drop them down below. If you're looking to pick up a copy of Reprobus, there's going to be a link down below going to Amazon where you can purchase it. If you have any suggestions on how to potentially make it better, or some of the images or some of the prose or anything, really anything, then leave a comment down below. Again, thanks for stopping by. Leave a like, leave a comment, and I'll see you on the next one.